Morning. So it's a busy day. There's lots of stuff going on. It's the first of the month. We got a new theme. All the colors of love. It's the Super Bowl Sunday. It's a palindrome day. It's the beginning of Black History Month, which we're going to talk a little bit about in a minute. It's also Groundhog's Day, of course, which is also in Imbolc, which is the halfway point between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. So, today more lights coming back, and so it's the celebration of the beginning of the light. And the goddess on this day is either Saint Bridget or Brede, if you're using the Gaelic term. And I love the story because we know it's Groundhog's Day. You know what happens on Groundhog's Day. Does anybody know whether he saw a shadow or not? Did he see it? He did not see a shadow. So that means that spring is that we're going to have 6 less weeks of winter. And the reason why I remember that is because the legend is that the Saint Bridget or Brede, she comes and visits the houses and starts to bring the spring, and she's a very ominous presence. And so if she's near, she blots out the sun. And so you don't have a shadow. So if you see your shadow, that means she's not near, and that's why there's 6 more weeks of winter. So it's kind of a cool little story there, right? So there's, we got lots going on today, and I want to talk about this theme we have, which is for the love of God. And this problem we were laughing about a little earlier, but given all the stuff that went on this week, many of us probably might have said, "Oh, for the love of God!" that when we say that, it's often impatience or angry or frustration. And we've had several big things happen this week. I mean, just beginning last Sunday, as the day was ending, we got news of the terrible accident with Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianni and 7 other people in a helicopter accident, which was tragic. And of course, what makes that complicated and tragic is that he's a human being. And so, how is it that we celebrate these big lives and people that are, celebrities and have such a big impact on us, and still, acknowledge the fullness of their life? And how do we do that? I mean, it's a challenging thing, right? And then, of course, the impeachment hearings were going on this week, and regardless of what you might think, what side you're on, all of us probably said, "Oh my God, for the love of God, what is going on here?" It's a challenging time. There's a lot of polarization. There's a lot of discord in our country at the moment and beyond. And so I want to talk about this. What does this mean? For the love of God, doing something for the love of God, and that all goes back, as I always say, it all goes back to what your definition of God is, right? So if your definition of God is of a angry, jealous, petty, vengeful person, then to do something in the love of that, for that. A lot of horrific things have happened for the love of that God, for the thought that we're separate, that we have to fight for what is ours, that we're, that there just has to be discord. And so what we know in our philosophy is that we have a totally different definition of what God is, which changes that completely, right? That when we have a different definition of God, then we do something for the love of God, it's a totally different experience. So Dr. Holmes talks about God this way, and not surprising, he thinks of God as love. And so he says, love is the self-givingness of the Spirit, the desire of life to express itself in terms of creation. Emerson tells us that love is a synonym for God. We're also told in the New Testament that he that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. So love is free from condemnation, and ever is it free from fear. So love is a cosmic force whose sweep is irresistible. A cosmic force that sweep is irresistible. So we know that when we understand that as God, doesn't that change what we do in the love of God, for the love of God, if we're thinking of it as this divine essence, this divine presence, then from that place of love, we act differently, we express differently. In honor of Black History Month, I want to share from a powerful African-American author named Toni Morrison. You might know her books, and in her book Paradise, she talks about what love is. And I'm just going to share, this is a fairly long sharing, but it's, I think, a powerful one. So she says, "Let me tell you about love. That silly word you believe is about whether you like somebody, or whether somebody likes you, or whether you can put up with somebody in order to get something or some place you want to be, or believe it has to do with how your body responds to another body, like robins or bisons, or maybe you believe love is how forces or nature or luck is benign to you, in particular, not maiming or killing you, but if so, doing it for your own good. Love is none of that. There is nothing in nature like it. Not in robins or bisons, or in the banging tails of your hunting dogs, and not in blossoms or suckling foal. Love is divine only and difficult always. If you think it is easy, you're a fool. If you think it is natural, you are blind. It is a learned application without reason or motive, except that it is God. You do not deserve love, regardless of the suffering you have endured. You do not deserve love because somebody did you wrong. You do not deserve love just because you want it. You can only earn, by practice and careful contemplation, the right to express it. And you have to learn how to accept it, which is to say, you have to earn God. You have to practice God. You have to think God carefully. And if you're a good and diligent student, you may secure the right to show love. Love is not a gift, it is a diploma. A love conferring certain privileges, the privileges of expressing love and the privilege of receiving it. How do you know you have graduated? You don't. What you do know is that you are human and therefore educable and therefore capable of learning how to learn and therefore interesting to God, who is interested only in himself, which is to say, is interested only in love. Do you understand me? God is not interested in you. He's interested in love and the bliss it brings to those who understand and share that interest. I mean, that's a powerful statement, right? That's a powerful idea that this essence, if we know, is only interested in this energy of love, and that it's not something it's something that's active. We have to act, we have to learn, we have to give it and receive it. Now, we know in our teaching that you don't have to earn love in the highest form, that just by who we are is the divine expression of love, and that love is who we are, and that we are worthy of that love just as we are. But that's not what Toni Morrison's talking about here. She's talking about the verb of love, right? The action of love, not the noun of love. The noun of love is this divine energy that we know moves through us, but there's an action involved in that, and how we show up as that noun, which is love. How do we show up as God? How do we show up as love? How do we see others? One of the most powerful things that we do in this teaching is to learn how to see others as that divine expression of God, which is love. Dr. Ernest Holmes said, "Seeing through the prism of God's love, I recognize the oneness of God and humankind." And taken from a prayer from Ernest Holmes, he wrote, he said, "Through my eyes, God sees the perfection of its kingdom. I too see perfection in all creation, the beauty of the omnipresent God." And even Jesus on Matthew 6, verses 22 said, "The light of the body is the eye. Therefore thine eye be single. The whole body shall be filled with light. But in this eye be evil, the whole body shall be full of darkness." So this idea that if we don't see with this light, then all there is darkness, right? So Tara Brach, one of my favorite meditation teachers, says, to remember we are connected to others, and the world is the essence of healing. It's the essence of this practice, this active practice of love. And John Stevenson, in his book Fullness of Joy, said, "Life isn't about overcoming problems and accomplishing things to mark our progress from birth to death. It is a realization that all creation is one, and that the love that brought forth all we know exists within each of us, waiting to be released. So this idea of love, for the love of God, becomes an action as a verb. And I always appreciate Scott Peck's definition of love in The Road Less Traveled. He says, the definition of love is the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. So it's the purpose of nurturing our own or another person's spiritual growth. And he goes on and he says, the act of loving is an act of self-evolution, even when the purpose of the act is someone else's growth. The act of loving affects us. It evolves us. Even if we're just loving others, even if we're just out there, even if we're just caring about somebody else's path and journey, we can't do that. We can't do that without evolving ourselves, without changing who we are and growing and healing who we are by this very act of doing. And so instead of even saying, for the love of God, it becomes for the love of love. For the love of love. That we love this idea of this one energy, this one perfection, this one power so much that is what moves through us in our act of self-evolution through the care and kindness that we give others, that we bring others into our life. So, as I mentioned, it's Black History Month, and since you guys also know that it's my birthday, and so I thought, what did I really want to say today? And so you guys get to kind of indulge me at this moment to talk a little bit about a passion I have, which actually has to do with love, and my own evolution, my own spiritual evolution over the last few years, but specifically, really, has expanded me in the last year. And it has to do with racial equality and racial equity. And I haven't talked about this from the pulpit much, but in the last several months, I have been involved as an advocate for another minister who there's lots of confidentiality here, so I can't talk about it too much. But this minister was brought up on ethics charges for talking about racism and for saying that our organization is affected by systemic white supremacy and unconscious bias. And because that minister spoke that out loud, pretty much just like I did, there's been ramifications for this minister's license and for his career, his life, and that's been a very shocking thing to me. And so what I want to say is that our organization is doing some amazing things. That it is attempting for diversity and inclusion and working with this to speak about it and to do some good work. And there is also some unconscious. There's some fear. There's a fear about even bringing up this issue in our organizations, for fear that mainly people of color will freak out if we actually say, you know what, you can't be an organization that was founded by a white man in the 1920s and not be affected by some systemic white supremacy and policies that are unconsciously beneficial to white people. There's no organization in all the country that could say that, unless there's been conscious work on healing and moving through and changing our policies. And so I know that the people of color that I've talked to already know that this is not a big surprise. And that in speaking it out, it's actually a safer place to be. In speaking out about how we have unconscious bias, how our policies sometimes benefit our white ministers, our white congregants, when we talk about that, then it is actually that act of love, right? Of speaking it out, speaking about it. And so I realized in this process, I kind of thought I didn't really have a lot to say about it because, I'm a white chick. I'm not racist. I'm a nice girl, And yet, over this time period that I've been speaking out about it from an organizational perspective, I realized that I do have a lot to say. And I have a lot to say to the white community about our unconscious bias, about our fragility, about how we show up in the world. And so I want to not be afraid to talk about it. And I want to be able to bring it out of the shadows. And one of the people that has helped me with this is an author by the name of Ibram Kendi, who just wrote a book called How to Be an Anti-Racist. How to Be an Anti-Racist. And so he talks about this idea about what racist is. And he says, a racist is one who is supporting a racist policy through their actions or inaction, or expressing a racist idea. And an anti-racist is one who is supporting an anti-racist policy through their actions or expressions as anti-racist ideas. And so he, in his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, he says this about this word, racism, or racist. He says, what's the problem with being not racist? Because that's what we hear a lot, right? We say, well, I'm not racist. And, I'm not racist. And so he says, what's the problem with being not racist? It is a claim that signifies neutrality. I am not a racist, but neither am I aggressively against racism. But there is no neutrality in the racism struggle. The opposite of racist is not racist. It is anti-racist. What's the difference? One endorses either the idea of a racial hierarchy as a racist or racial equality as an anti-racist. One other believes problems are rooted in groups of people as a racist, or locates the roots of problems in power and policy as an anti-racist. That's a really big point. So a racist idea is rooted in people, that it's people, it's the people's beliefs that or fundamental makeup or behaviors of people. An anti-racist realizes that it's rooted in power and in policies. The power and the policies that we have to change. And so he says, there is no in-between safe space of not racist, and the claim of not racist neutrality is a mask for racism. This may seem harsh, but it's important at the outset that we apply one of the core principles of anti-racism, which is to return the word racist itself back to its proper usage. Racist is not, as Richard Spencer argues, who's a white supremacist, pejorative. It is not the worst word in the English language. It is not the equivalent of a slur. It is descriptive. And the only way to undo racism is to consistently identify and describe it, and then dismantle it. The attempt to turn this usefully descriptive term into an almost unusable slur is, of course, designed to do the opposite, to freeze us in inaction. That is what I see happening with our organization, is that even bringing it out freezes us in action because people can be afraid, can be concerned of the backlash, of how people are going to react to this, the fear. And so that if we take that word and make it into this terrible, slur, then we lose the opportunity to speak about these issues. So he says on page 10 of this book, the good news is that racist and anti-racist are not fixed identities. We can be a racist one moment and an anti-racist the next. What we say about race, what we do about race in each moment determines what, not who we are. So at any moment, this is a fluid thing. So take a breath. So what I have realized throughout my travels in this understanding is that there's a lot of unconscious bias, right? There's a lot of privilege that I used to think wasn't there. And one of the questions, I just did a living room conversation with my students, my practitioner students, about this very topic. And one of the questions is, does your race affect your daily life? Does your race affect your daily life? Now, not too long ago, I probably would have said, no, it doesn't affect me. No, it doesn't affect me at all. And that is true in some ways, is that because I walk through a white world, right, that caters to who I am as a white person. But the way I answer that today is, it affects me every minute of every day, because I can walk into a store, any store, and pretty much be guaranteed that I'm not going to be trailed. I can walk in that same store, pretty much guaranteed that I can find all the hair products I need for my hair. I can go to any beauty salon anywhere, and they'll know how to cut my fine, straight hair. I won't be fired or reprimanded for the way my hair is naturally. I can, look at this little microphone I have on. It's flesh color. Whose flesh color? When Charlene speaks, it sticks out, That is how my race affects me every single day. Every single day, my race affects me. When I get stopped by a police officer, I don't think I'm going to live through that experience. Even if I'm rude, even if I don't comply, I'm going to probably live. And one of the greatest questions to understand white privilege is to ask yourself, if you're driving down a dark, lonely road at night and the police officer stops you, and there's those blinking lights behind you, and you pull over and you look down at your skin, and you could be any color skin you want to be in that moment, what color do you choose? Most of us, if not all, would say in that moment, I want white skin. And that is privilege. Any white person, regardless of your, how much money you make, your education, where you grew up, can still walk down the street and get the privilege of being white. And so, I realize that one of my charges in this world is to talk about this more, is to be a place of healing, to help us learn how to use our teachings, our principles, who we are, which goes back to being, for the love, for the love of that divine energy that indeed moves through every single person exactly the same, regardless of how we show up in the world. And to realize that we have unconscious bias, that we have privilege, that we that we must stand in helping to become a more equitable world, a more equitable situation in our world. And I want to share with you one last story about how unconscious this can be, and because it's not just about racism, it can be about sexism, it can be about age, especially as a woman. As a woman, I have been in the world of male-dominant world, and a lot of misogyny. We know this. We know this in our political environment. The difference between women politicians and men. And I had an experience of this, which I was so blown away by it, that I was in a meeting, with 3 men and another woman. There was 5 of us. And we were actually having this whole conversation about racial equity. And the men were starting to talk, and they were supposed to go around, and 2 men were going to talk, and then the woman was going to talk. And the 3rd man, after the 2 men talked, just jumped in and started talking. And the woman that was supposed to talk next stopped him. And she said, excuse me, we're talking about racial equality. I just want you to notice what's happening right now. The men are all talking, and I don't feel like I've had my chance, I've had my opportunity. Well, I wish I could tell you that I sat there and went, yeah, go sister, I'm for you. But I went, oh, come on. These guys aren't, I actually defended the men because I think it's part of our training as well. And in my mind, I didn't say that out loud, thank God, but my first reaction was, that's not, but the man that she was addressing has taken diversity training, has taken inclusivity training, is conscious about this, and he modeled so beautifully what you do. He looked at her and he said, I wasn't even aware I was doing that. Thank you for letting me know. I so appreciate that. I'm going to be more aware of that. Please, yes, speak. And that was a beautiful model, right? And this is this whole idea of listening, of believing. Believing people when they tell us their story, when they tell us what's happening, what's going on for them. To listen, to believe, and to understand our own unconscious bias. My own unconscious bias as a woman was let the man speak. A feminist woman was still, what are you talking about? When we step into this role of being willing and open to listen, when we don't opt out, as white people, we can opt out. I was so challenged by this situation in our organization that I wanted to opt out, damn it. I wanted to just go back and not have to talk about it, not have to be about it. And I realized that that very thing was white privilege, is that I could go back and just be me and didn't have to step up and talk. But the thing about it is that over the many years, I've developed amazing, beautiful relationships with people of color that I can't opt out. I can't. So I want to share with you one other story about what love does for us, because it's all part of this. It's a story about Franz Kafka, the Bohemian novelist and short story writer. And I'm just going to read this. It's a post that was posted on a man's Facebook page, Werner Van Blurk. And he says, when he was 40 years old, the renowned Bohemian novelist and short story writer Franz Kafka, who never married and had no children, was strolling through the park in Berlin, when he chanced upon a young girl crying her eyes out because she had lost her favorite doll. She and Kafka looked for the doll without success. Kafka told her to meet him there the next day and they would look again. The next day, when they still had not found the doll, Kafka gave the girl a letter. It's written by the doll that said, "Please don't cry. I have gone on a trip to see the world. I'm going to write to you about my adventures." Thus began a story that continued to the end of Kafka's life. When they would meet, Kafka would read out loud his carefully composed letters of adventures and conversations about the beloved doll, which the girl found enchanting. Finally, Kafka read her a letter of the story that brought the doll back to Berlin, and he then gave her a doll that he had purchased. "This does not look anything like my doll," she said. Kafka handed her another letter that explained, "My trips, they have changed me." The girl hugged the new doll and took it home with her. A year later, Kafka died. Many years later, the now grown-up girl found a letter that was tucked into the unnoticed crevice in the doll. The tiny letter signed by Kafka said, "Everything you love is very likely to be lost, but in the end, love will return in a different way." Love is an evolving thing. Love changes us. The love that the divine is changes us. And it evolves into new and different things. And we can't be afraid to let go of something that feels familiar and safe and right to us without knowing that that transformation will bring a new experience and a new expression of love. Dr. Holmes says, "Love does not overcome hate and fear by argument or force, but by some subtle power of transformation, transmutation, sublimation, invisible in its essence, but apparent through its act." Invisible in its essence, but apparent in its act. We are so powerful. We are powerful beings, and when we know that the divine energy of love moves through us, we can change the world. We can change our politics. We can change our race relations. We can change the environment and our climate challenges. We can change our love relationships. We can change. That's what I'm passionate about. Thank you for listening. So let's go into prayer, okay? All right, so I just want to breathe in this very essence of love and light. To know that there is this power, this presence that indeed moves through all things. To know that for the love of God, for the love of that divine presence, for the love of knowing that that pure energy and essence, which is God, moves through me, I know that I'm a presence for good in the world. That I stand in that truth. And I know that we each stand in our own truth of how we are to show up in this world. How we allow the love that we know to be to change and grow within us, to change and grow our world. And so let us just move into our heart space, that place that is a symbol of love, and feel into this very moment. What is that quality? How does love show up for you? How is it that you want to express this love out in the world today? Just feel that for a moment. Now just allow that quality or energy to just breathe out into this room, this beautiful room with loving, kindred spirits. And let this love touch each person. If somebody is watching online, just feel that we are all connected, we are all one, and so that love is moving through you as well. And we expand this energy, this awareness beyond these walls, beyond this town. And we find that place where we came from this morning, the place where you might live or you might be staying, and just bless that love to all those who reside there or who have reside there, or family members that might no longer be in that space. And let us expand past the borders of Virginia or Maryland, or wherever we came from. Let's just expand it to our capital, to where those laws are being made, where people are standing up for what is good. And just know that we are a force, that our voice, who we are, affects those who are making those laws. And we know that we have the power of the vote and the power of our voices, that we can show up. That we can show up and stand up for love. Let us expand to our country and to the place where the Super Bowl is being held today, and as Kristen mentioned, just love all those who, even in the celebration, even in the joy, are affected in a challenging and negative way. I know safety and healing and wholeness for all. Let us expand around our world to places where there might be a need for this energy of love that we stand in today. And as you think about this beautiful globe and our climate, knowing that we can stand in love by our actions, by how we live in the world, by how we connect with nature. And as we expand beyond our earth into that universal presence, just feel into the expansiveness of the divine. And breathe back into this room that love. Place your hand over your heart and just feel it. Feel how you might have been changed in just this little time of connecting with love, of spreading it around our globe, of connecting with that divine presence. And know that what we do here together, how we show up in spiritual practice, matters. It changes us, it changes the world. And for this, I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for this opportunity and for the word that I've spoken and for each person's participation in that sincerity of love and light that we all show up as. I'm grateful for the law that makes it so. I'm grateful for this teaching. I'm grateful for my ability to be able to speak the truth and have a platform to do that. And so I release this word into that law, knowing it is done, and we say this together, and so it is. So we let it be. And so we're going to hear from you guys again.